So you're interested in moving to Portugal. Quite frankly, me too. Odd, I know, because I've already done it, but truth be told, I'm really interested in people's stories. I really like to get to the why and the how of it all. Today's interview is a lot of fun because I sit down with a lawyer. Lawyers are certainly supposed to be smart, right? They look at things with a different lens than an average Joe like me. Well, what can we learn from Jim, who moved his family to Portugal over the summer? Did he actually adapt well? Is it any easier for him than anyone else? My name is Josh. This is Expats Everywhere. Let's find out. Jim, thank you so much for joining Expats Everywhere. We appreciate it. Last time we talked actually on the phone / Skype or Zoom,
Yep.
whatever it was, you were still in the US.
I was.
Now we're here in Portugal.
I was still in my office in the US, which has since been gone too, so.
Yeah, so we've got to unpack how exactly you got here and what life is like, yeah?
Yeah, I'm fine doing that, yes.
Okay, so when did you start the process to move to Portugal?
So I personally did a scouting trip last August, so this would be August of 2021.
Okay.
Came back from that, decided, my wife and I said, let's do it. We put a big deposit down on school, and that was kind of the point of no return.
Okay.
Put that money down, and we're like, well, we got to go now. We just put a big chunk of change down on school, so that's
what was happening in the US at the time where you were like, okay, it's time to go?
We tell people we didn't move from the United States. We didn't leave the United States because we don't like the United States.
Sure.
We wanted to move to Portugal because we wanted a different way of life.
Cool.
So I think that's a better way to say it.
It's a good reason to move.
It's a great reason to move. But I would say what was going on in the United States, there were a couple things. So beginning of 2021, we had decided, well, our son was going to be graduating from 5th grade, going to a different school at the end of the school year. So we started looking at, well, where are we going to live? What school are we going to send him to? What school are we sending our other kids to? And we started the process of thinking about selling our house. And then something crazy happened. For those of people, I don't remember if you were in the United States when this happened, but housing market went bonkers.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden, what we could afford became $200,000 or $300,000 more than what we would have paid before.
Okay.
And at that point, we basically said, you know what are we going to do? Do we want to pay $300,000 more for a house, or and sell our house at a higher price? Yes, but not having where to live. Or
right.
Do we want to look at other options? And so we started looking at other options. We looked at Costa Rica, we looked at New Zealand, we looked in Europe, and then my wife one day we're taking a walk. She's like, "What about Portugal?" I was like, "What about Portugal?" I've never heard. I mean, I know Portugal, but and so we looked into it, and between the healthcare and the people and how friendly they are, and having our kids learn another language, and having them being able to get a European passport in 5 years, all of these things started to say, okay, well, maybe this is something we should look into. So that was really what drew us to this.
Okay.
To this lifestyle.
So much more about changing your lifestyle, living a different way of life, exploring a new part of the world, rather than other political factors.
We really like the idea that here in Portugal, it's much more about the community as opposed to about the individual.
Sure.
Like America is, people go home to their houses and they spend the evening at their house watching TV, doing the things that they do, eating together as a family, which is all well and good, right?
Yep.
But here in Portugal, you live your life almost in the community. Like from going to the park at night. Like you can go to the park on Tuesday night at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Kids are running around, even though it's a school day, kids are running around, families are out, people are watching the football game, just socializing. And it's just, we wanted that lifestyle as opposed to just living alone in our houses.
Yeah, well, family has a different meaning, like you say.
Yes.
I mean, it's a larger family network. It's the community, it's the village, right?
It is.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it was a contributing factor for us choosing Portugal. We had been abroad for a while, but yeah, we wanted to be here, slow our life down. We were in Singapore, which was a much more fast-paced way of life, and we wanted to kind of slow things down, get back to the European lifestyle. Okay, very cool. So what were some of the steps that you took to make your desire a reality?
it took so many. Well, obviously we had to go through the whole D7 process, which was a debacle for us, I'll be honest. It was, there was a glitch with our daughter's application, so about 3 weeks before we were supposed to leave, we still hadn't gotten our approval, and it had been 60 days at that point. The D7, obviously, as you know, is the visa that we decided to use to get over here.
Yep.
And so the issue is that as you normally apply about 90 days before you're supposed to leave, that way you get your visa in time. When you leave, you're okay. Because there was a glitch, and that's all they told us, there's a glitch. My daughter's application was not processed through to the embassy, and because her application didn't go through the embassy, they wouldn't take action on any of our applications, and we've got a family of 5.
Okay.
So about 3 weeks before we're set to leave, I called up the embassy, and because it had been so long, they were willing to talk to me, and they said, oh, you have to deal with VFS, which is the company that processes all these things. And long story short, we ultimately did get our visa. We had to delay our flight twice, and then we didn't actually get approved until a week after we'd been in Portugal. So about a week ago, I just actually flew back to the United States last week. And got the visa stamped into our passport, but now we have an excuse to go to Madrid next month so my wife and kids can fly and then go through border control and get their visas stamped.
Got it. So you took all the passports back.
I took them all.
And did you take them directly to DC?
I flew into DC. I took them right next morning after I flew in, took them right over to the Portuguese embassy. They knew I was coming. They were very nice about it. They warned me that maybe it wasn't a great idea to have all. So if anyone watching this thinks that's what they should do, be aware, leaving my wife and children here was a risk. It is technically illegal to be here without a passport. So there is that to consider, but the person that I was dealing with at the embassy told me that I could do that, and if I wanted to.
Yeah, it's certainly a gray area, and I don't like to travel without having my passport, even domestically. So, for example, we flew in today, and I brought my passport, even though I wasn't leaving Portugal. But like, just in case something happens, and I do need to leave Portugal, I need my passport on me. Otherwise, I've got to go back up to Porto, get my passport, and go. And who knows what emergency would cause me to do that. But
I was more concerned about, okay, is there a medical emergency? We've got a car now.
Yeah.
So my wife we're not supposed to drive without our passport in the car, although we do not drive with our passport in the car because, I mean, for obvious reasons, we just don't want to have our passport with us at all times.
Yeah.
So there was concerns there, but long story short, I made it back.
Good.
Everyone's got their visas, but now my wife and kids have to leave the country. Well, they have to go through border control, get their passports stamped. The nice thing about going to Madrid is we won't be actually leaving the Schengen, so I can choose not to go through border control, and we'll still all have one re-entry left if we need to use that at some point.
One re-entry before your CEF appointment,
before our visa technically expires at the end of December, then our CEF appointment is in January.
Yeah. So you want to explain to me that with your entries, your entry allotment with
So when you get the D7 approved, it's for 4 months. And you have 2 re-entries.
Right.
And the first re-entry is when you first come in.
Yep.
Now, in terms of when you have to come in, I'm not quite sure. But you get the first re-entry when you come in on the visa, which I did, but my wife and kids are still theoretically here on a tourist visa. Well, not theoretically. Legally, they are here on a tourist visa, which means they have to leave the country by the end of October. Which is why we're going to Madrid next month.
Yes.
So that's the first re-entry is when they come back in on the D7, and then you have one more re-entry. So I know from other people in the Facebook groups and things where people will say, well, wait, I'm a public speaker. I have to go back to the United States to give keynote speeches and stuff. What do I do? Well, you pretty much need to plan for that. If you have a reason why you need to be back in the United States repeatedly, then maybe the D7 isn't going to work for you, or you need to figure out, well, there's going to be a period of about 5 months when I'm only going to be allowed to go back to the United States one time.
That's right.
So our visa runs out at the end of December, and then our CEF appointment is in January. And the issue for me with regards to this re-entry is I wanted to sign up for a coaching program that's in London, but I can't go. I guess I could go one time for one event, but I won't be able to go to the second event. And so it's like, well, I'm just going to push all that off until after we get our residency.
Okay.
So
I love the fact that we're talking about a lot of like legal technicality, because that's your field of expertise, is it
yes.
not?
Well, I'm not an immigration lawyer. I'm not a lawyer
Sure.
in Portugal.
Yeah.
But yes, I am a lawyer.
And did you dig into kind of the legal aspects of moving to Portugal? Is that something that you enjoy doing, or?
Yes, but I will tell you, it is complicated. Like when we got our lease signed, we hired a lawyer here. She was great, and she reviewed our lease for us. She negotiated with the landlord. She actually signed the lease on our behalf. So all for like 500 euros, which is ridiculous. So I told her, you need to raise your rates, and she's like, no, I'm comfortable with where I'm at. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So
that's good. Okay. All right, so let's talk a bit more about your settling here into Portugal. So you're based in Lisbon, you're in the Campo de Rique neighborhood.
We are.
Is that right?
Yep.
And how are you finding things?
We love it. I mean, it's a process. Every day you learn something new. Every day you figure something out. But I mean, you figure, like, I'll tell you a story, and I still have not figured this out because I have a fixer. So this is very important. If you move to Portugal, you need to get a fixer. And by what I mean by fixer, I mean I've got a guy who I basically call or text anytime I need something. And if I need to call like something and do something bureaucratic where they don't speak any English, he does it for me. Like he's best way to say it, he's my fixer. He turned on our power, he turned on our Vodafone, he got our internet set up, he got our gas set up. Oh my God, that was an experience. It took us a month to get our gas set up. We were here for 2 weeks taking cold showers.
It was in the summer though, so it was hot outside.
It was still cold.
Still cold, okay.
Still cold.
Fair enough.
Cold showers are not fun regardless of the year. But anyway, he handles everything for us.
Good.
And he can't figure out what this woman was talking about. He said, if she talks to you again, tell her. So basically, there's a woman that lives on our first floor or ground floor. I'm not sure which floor. I guess she's on the ground floor. And she stopped me one day, and she's speaking all sorts of Portuguese to me about paying somebody €5 for the trash. And I still can't figure out what she's talking about. Yeah, see, you're looking at me confused, like you don't understand either.
Nope.
And I told him, I'm like, do I need to pay somebody €5 for the trash? And he's like, no, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's little things like that just pop up. And I saw her again one day, and I just said hi, and she said hi, and I don't know, she's like this little old lady. I don't know what she's talking about. So
okay.
Anyway, you have these experiences every single day, and it's a matter of learning kind of the culture and how people work and how things work, and it's a process every day.
Nice. How are you guys feeling now? You've been here 6 weeks? Is that right?
We've been here
8 weeks?
Since July 27th.
Okay.
Today's the 12th, so about 6-7 weeks.
Okay. How are you feeling? Feeling settled?
No.
Okay.
No.
Why not?
The apartment's not completely furnished yet.
Okay.
So we got a couch, we got beds, we got a kitchen table, we got appliances. That's the other thing. We had to buy appliances for the whole kitchen.
Okay.
So we did not have a refrigerator, we did not have a washer, we did not have a dryer. So we bought all that stuff.
Because you rented something that was completely unfurnished.
Completely unfurnished.
Got it.
The other thing that is really hard for me to get used to, and I don't know if you have this experience in Porto, I know Dan and Michelle you interviewed Dan and Michelle from
Honeymoon Always.
I know that they had this experience, was the bathroom.
Okay.
There's a smell
right.
in the bathroom, and it's because we're in an old building and the plumbing is not what it is in the United States. They don't have P-traps.
P-traps.
And it just goes straight down. And when it goes straight down, it means the smell comes straight up.
That's right.
And so there's from time to time, there's just this funky smell in the bathroom. And that I have a really hard time with. I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but it is an issue.
It happens in old buildings. Yeah, they don't do the P-trap thing. It's a simple fix too, but okay.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that off camera.
Well, no, it's a simple fix for on the construction side.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So not feeling 100% settled, but you have been buying things to equip your house a bit better.
Right.
What's that process been like? Have you found that to be easy or challenging?
I mean, it's a process.
Yep.
I don't want to say it's challenging. I don't want to say it's easy. I just say it's like you just take it day by day.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to IKEA. Most of the stuff we're putting into this apartment is IKEA.
Okay.
Because IKEA is cheap, it's easy to transport, it's heavy, but it's a good way to equip our house, especially if a year from now we decide we don't want to keep a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Now we'll probably keep the beds and probably the kitchen table, but a lot of the stuff we might leave or sell or do something else with.
Got it.
And we really, I mean, we have a style of how we want to furnish our house, but we don't want to furnish this apartment in that style, if that makes sense, because we know we're not going to be in this apartment long term. It'll probably be a year and we're going to get out of this apartment. So
off camera, we spoke about Portuguese language and what you're doing to help adapt to Portuguese and learn more and faster. So what are you doing?
What am I doing? I try and talk it every day.
Okay.
I try and learn a couple words every day. Whenever we go, so I made a point when I first got here to start working at the same coffee shop every single day.
Build a relationship.
So the barista there, she speaks perfect English. A couple of them don't speak much English, but the one that I normally deal with, she speaks perfect English. I told her very early on, don't speak English to me. And so she just speaks Portuguese to me.
Awesome.
Even today, before we came here, I went to a shop down the street and I got coffee, spoke Portuguese to the woman. I knew what she was saying at lunch today. And I would say a lot of it is not so much knowing what they're saying, it's just learning the custom of what they're going to say at this particular time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And so
there are patterns that develop.
There are patterns
in speech
that develop.
and
Yes. And it's no different than it is in the United States. You
Right.
sit down, it's like, would you like something to drink? And you
That's
learn
right.
Bebida is drink. And as soon as you hear that word, it clues you in, oh, she's asking me if I want something to drink.
Right.
So you have to learn, I don't know all the words, but you listen for certain keywords that you can kind of focus in on, and that helps.
Yeah.
My wife is trying to find a class to take. She's going to take like an immersion class for 2 weeks.
Okay.
We went to see Top Gun in the park last week.
Oh, nice. Top Gun, the
Top
first
Gun
one
Maverick.
or the Maverick? Okay. Cool.
Yeah, they played it in the park. It was packed.
Cool. For free.
For free.
Nice. That's awesome.
And they had Portuguese subtitles. So I learned that Baija is down because there's a scene where they're doing push-ups and it's like Baija, Baija, dos.
Yeah.
And so I learned Baija's down.
Yeah.
So there's you just start to pick things up.
Awesome. What about cost of living? So you're relatively new here, but how have you found cost of living? Has it met your expectations, or is it maybe worse than what you had expected?
It's funny you say that because my family members, I must have talked about that a lot, because my family members seem to think like that's the only reason we moved here is because it's cheaper. That is not the only reason we moved here, but it is definitely a benefit because we're living off basically an American salary, a US salary, because I'm still practicing law in the United States, but paying European prices or Portuguese prices for things. So we got our electric bill this month, and it was 30 euros. We were paying like $250 a month in the summer for electricity.
Yep.
So from that standpoint, yes, much lower. I mean, you can get a coffee, and a good coffee and a croissant each morning is like 3 euros. I get a nice big croissant with a latte for 3 euros. I mean, so there's a lot of things that are much less expensive. It's not always that way. There's other things that are more expensive. Electronics are more expensive. If you go to the store and you try and buy a computer or a phone or things like that, some things are much more expensive. But I mean, the cost of living in general, I'd say it's less than the United States, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So from your experience, since you're new here, what are some things people can do as they prepare to move, and also when they first arrive to adapt quickly?
I would say number one, be prepared. Have some savings built up.
Okay.
Because you're going to spend a lot of money
That's good
when
advice.
you first get here.
Yep.
I mean, if you're one of those If you're somebody who's just coming over with like the bags that you have and nothing else, you're going to have to furnish your apartment. That's not going to be cheap. If you are in a situation like we are, where we have to drive our kids to school. Now, we were hoping that we would not have to do that, but we do. And so we had to buy a car. And they're not giving us a loan because, we don't have any credit here. So we had to pay cash for a car. So there's things like that you just need to be prepared to do. What a lot of people are doing is they're selling their house in the United States, and then they've got equity built up, and that gives them a cushion when they come over. That was another issue for us. So the day we landed in Portugal, we thought we were going to get a bunch of messages from a realtor about the offers we were getting in our house because it was supposed to have just gone live. Instead, we were getting messages from a realtor about the water leak that happened in our attic, which has gutted our kitchen, and they're starting to work on that. So we've been here 6 weeks, and our house was supposed to have been sold by now.
Sure.
It's not. So you got to plan for the unexpected.
Sure.
You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I would recommend trying to sell your house before you leave, based on what happened to us.
Yep.
But that wasn't a realistic possibility. We've got dogs, we've got kids. It was just going to be hard.
Yep. Because then where do you go? You've sold your house. Where do you go?
And then where do you go? I mean, ideally you sell it, then you move, and then you get the closing done. But
yep.
So that's an issue. So I would say the best advice I can give you is make sure you have enough savings or a plan for where you're going to get that money when you get here. Maybe you're still on a salary, maybe you work remotely, something like that. That would be the best advice. But the other stuff you can't really plan for. I mean, you can't plan for dealing with a whole new culture and a whole new language until you're here.
That's right. Yeah.
There's just no way to do it.
All right. If you guys want to know more about how to plan to move to Portugal and what it's like living here, click on this playlist right here with a bunch of other interviews that we've done with other people who've done what you've done.
Yep.
Now, let's get moving. Bye.